And welcome back. We are in the midst of rhubarb season, so that's the primary ingredient in today's bread. And Krissy Gibson from Take the Cake is baking that with us this morning. Hi, Krissy.
Good morning.
Good to see you. In the midst of rhubarb season.
Yep.
There's plenty of it.
I know, right? So a lot of us do have it in our back gardens. This rhubarb today came from my in-laws' back garden, and then it just kind of keeps coming, doesn't it?
It does, yes.
So it's nice to have a different idea, something new to do with your rhubarb. This is rhubarb bread. I grew up on it, so I'm going to share it with you today.
Well, we grew up on rhubarb. It was such a popular, and still is a popular ingredient in Ireland, but mainly rhubarb tart.
Right, but you run out of things to do with it. So we're going to try something new today. This is a great alternative to something we're all kind of sick of at this stage, which is banana bread. Mm-hmm. It's the same idea, though. It's a great breakfast treat. So you can make it as muffins or bread. Today we'll talk about both. We're going to make bread while we're here. Now, we're starting with 300 grams of light muscovado sugar, Aiden, and we're not going to use demerara. We're not going to use dark muscovado sugar. We're using light muscovado sugar. We're going to add 1 egg to that, okay? And good news about this, it's not a very fussy bread, so you can kind of just throw everything in and mix it up, and that's okay. It's going to turn out fine.
But your type of muscovado is important.
Yes. You don't want to use demerara, and you don't want to use dark muscovado. So we've got an egg with our light muscovado sugar, and we're going to add 2 liquids to it, all right? We're adding 240 mils of fresh buttermilk and 160 mils of vegetable oil. I like to use rapeseed oil. We're going to get all of our liquids sort of mixed in together. If you don't have an electric hand mixer at home, you can also just use a whisk. That'll be just fine, okay? So we're going to have a bowl full of liquids here, and we're adding 1 more liquid, which is pure vanilla extract. We're going to add 1 teaspoon of that, or say 6 mils. Now, we've done that. We're going to leave it. Move on to our dry ingredients. We have 400 grams of self-raising flour. We're going to add 2 more things to that, okay? A teaspoon of salt, which is 6 grams, and a teaspoon of bread soda, not to be confused with baking powder.
Yeah, or powder.
Okay? Baking soda, bread soda, same thing, but we're not using baking powder today. We're using bread soda, and this recipe is up on your website. Mm-hmm. So we are going to add our dry ingredients to our wet ingredients, okay? And as I said a second ago, if you don't, do all of these steps exactly in the same order, it's okay. This is a very forgiving bread, and it's not going to mess up on you. Just make the measurements right, and it'll be fine. Okay,
and like you say, similar to the banana bread in the simplicity, unlike the sourdough bread, which proved a lot more difficult for most of us than we thought it would be.
Yeah, I know. Well, this one is just it's just really easy. It really is, and it's one of those things like soup, where it's so forgiving. You can just sort of throw everything in, mix it up, and it'll turn out just fine.
Okay.
So we're going to add our rhubarb now and pecans. Now, you could use, say, walnuts in this instead if you wanted, but I have to say, I've had it both ways, and the pecans are much nicer. If you have a nut allergy at home, you could skip the nuts, okay? So we have 180 grams of thinly sliced fresh rhubarb. Did you know that you can also freeze your rhubarb?
Did not.
If you do, just make sure that you slice it up first, okay? And I like to freeze mine and portion it. And then when you take it out of the freezer, it'll look quite different, but you can still use it the same. Today we're using fresh rhubarb, thinly sliced. This is 180 grams, all right? Now, a lot of people have a ton of rhubarb at home. They don't know what to do with it. They want to get rid of it, so you might be tempted to add more to this. I'm going to encourage you not to do that, because what will happen is you will get sinkholes in your bread.
Wow, that's a first.
You'll get sinkholes in your bread. There's a lot of water in rhubarb. It's it's like celery. It's there's a lot of water in it, and if you add too much of it, the bread will collapse in the middle. We don't want that to happen.
Okay.
180 grams.
So are we talking 2 stalks more?
That sounds about right. It depends, though. Some of your stalks are fat, aren't they? There's a different kind of rhubarb that isn't so
and
fat.
Thinner. Yeah,
right.
okay,
So it's
do
hard
it by
to
weight.
say. Yeah, you do it by weight. 180 grams. 190 would probably be okay. If you go up to 200 grams in sliced rhubarb, you're probably pushing it.
Ooh, okay.
You might end up getting a sinkhole.
There's not much wriggle room.
Yeah, there's not. So here we do our pecans. These are, as you can see, they're finely chopped, okay? We're going to add those in and give this just one more mix. I mentioned earlier that we're going to do a bread today, a loaf. This right here will make 2 loaves for you. If you want to make muffins instead, you'll probably get a good dozen out of it. Here I have a greased bread pan. You'll get 2 loaves, and we're going to put our batter right into the center and fill it about halfway, okay? If it goes further than halfway, it'll probably end up being too big for you, and it might, you know, go over the side.
Mushroom out over the top.
Yeah, we don't want that. So we've got our bread kind of filling halfway. Last thing, do not forget this step. Do you see that gorgeous crust on the top of your muffin?
Right here. Yeah, it's almost like well, there's a crust and like a frosting.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. You don't want to skip that step. So here's that step. This is a tablespoon of butter, melted, okay? We're adding it to 100 grams of white sugar. You can use caster sugar or granulated sugar. I always steer toward caster sugar. Now, just 2 ingredients. It's not a lot of butter. We're going to mix these together with our fingers, okay? What's going to happen is we're going to have sort of a dryish sugar crumble, okay? It's very simple. Now, you might think it's a lot. Go ahead and use it all of your crumble on top of your 2 loaves, all right? And it's important that you do this before you bake it, all right? If you forget this step and take your loaf out of the oven 5 minutes later because you remembered late, it's not going to work.
Oh, wow, okay.
This bakes into the top, okay? And the reason why it's nicely attached there and it looks like a frost is that it got baked in.
Okay, so into the oven, preheated at
160, and we're just going to bake this for about an hour. If you decide to do the muffins instead, bake those for a half an hour, all right? Give that a taste.
Okay.
And tell me what you think.
Okay, so I'm just wondering, is the sweet stuff we've just put on the top, is that kind of to balance out the... Would you say rhubarb sour? Is that the right word for it?
Yeah, it's definitely a tart vegetable, and it is a vegetable. You often see it baked with fruits. Isn't that nice? But the cake itself is not very sweet, is it? So it's nice to have that sugar crust on top to give it not only some texture, but to give it a little bit of sweetness.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
Isn't that nice?
Quite dense as well. I like that, but it's light.
And make sure that when you add your rhubarb, you don't have a bunch of pieces all stuck together, because then you're going to get a big old chunk of rhubarb in the middle, and you might get a sinkhole. Make sure they get mixed in.
Krissy, as always, really brilliant. What a novel way of using up the rhubarb. And for more of Krissy's stockers and recipes, you can check out takethecake.ie, and all the recipe details from this wonderful bread are on our website as well. Krissy, good to see you. We'll see you soon.